Hi and welcome to this week's Something for the Weekend. I'm Tony, Sales Manager here at Martin Lynch and Sons, and this week, due to the rumours or the news that we've all heard about the forthcoming changes that may or may not be happening to our licenses in the future, we're taking a look at linear amplifiers, what's kind of on offer for your money and whether you need one and which one should you go for really. So let's jump straight into it. Okay, so before we break down the linears that are on offer at the moment, for those of you that have never used a linear amplifier before or are not too sure even what a linear amplifier is, basically it's a device that will take your small input signal, RF signal, and amplify it into a larger signal. Therefore, in theory, making your signal stronger and hopefully making you make that contact a little bit easier. So with regards to linear amplifiers, there's basically two types that are really popular in the amateur world, and that is the valve linear and the solid state linear. Now, what are the difference between these linears? What are the pros? What are the cons? We're just briefly going to go over that now, just to give you a little insight into what is available and what may be suitable for you. Okay, so let's start with solid state linears and some of the pros of a solid state linear. Number one, they're pretty efficient, so you're using a lot less power consumption in order to make your signal greater. Another pro of the solid state linear amplifiers is they're actually quite lightweight. So if you're moving around, running on a DXpedition, for example, or you like to move around your equipment around the shack a fair bit, then these are very easy to lift. I mean, for example, this is a kilowatt linear, and in theory I could lift it with one hand, as you can see. Now, I wouldn't want to carry it with one hand, obviously. Moving on from that is also ease of use. Literally, you can plug in a solid state linear, as long as your antennas are correct, you can literally plug it in, go to the band you want, and a lot of the time these will follow the radio that you're using and go straight to that band and then start operating. You've got no warm-up time or waiting time to start operating. Are there downsides? Yeah, you know, there's always downsides with most equipment. So kind of the cons on these are that you really do need a resonant antenna. Now, I should have mentioned resonant antennas from the start of this really, because as we all know as amateurs, a lot of you guys and girls will be screaming, do you need a linear amplifier? No, just get a decent antenna. Yes, that is true. However, sometimes you do need a linear. You know, you may be doing emergency work, for example. So with the solid state linears, what you must remember, as I said, is it does need a very good antenna. So they will work on a maybe 2-to-1, 3-to-1 if you're very, very lucky sort of match. Ideally, if you can get one with a built-in ATU, then that's going to help. If not, you want to take a look at a high quality external ATU and hopefully get your antenna tuned for that. But if you can go resonant, and I'm a true believer that if you're running higher power, then please try your best to use a resonant antenna and get a decent match on it. So that's kind of a con in some respects. Okay. Another con with these as well is they can sort of be affected by power spikes, etc., and ALC issues. But again, that's going to be down to the way you set your station up. So what you'll find is it's not a fault of the linear itself, it's normally a fault of the operator and the way they've set their station up. And I know a lot of you don't want to hear that when you've had issues with your linears. Okay, now moving on to valve linears. As if by magic, I'm going to click my fingers and we'll get some on the table. Okay, so moving on to valve linears, and a couple of the pros, I should say, of a valve linear is they're pretty resilient. So as we were saying with the solid state linears, that they can be affected by, you know, poor antenna matching, etc., spikes in voltage and the likes, and ALC. With the valve linears, pretty smooth running when it comes to a poor match, and you'll find that. So I had a chat with the engineers, and they're kind of saying that you can look at maybe even a 5-to-1, 6-to-1 mismatch, and the valve linears will just kind of breeze through and apply that power for you. Cost-wise, is a bit of a pro for valve linears, is that you'll find that whereas, you know, the valves are quite expensive to buy separately, if you're buying a new unit, for example, you've got that warranty period and you've got a lower purchase cost. So if you're looking at it in the long run, these are actually probably cheaper to run than the solid state linears. Now, obviously it all depends on the size of the valves that you're using, etc. but if you treat one of these well, it should last you for years. And we find that, you know, such people are still using linears such as the Kenwood TL922s, for example. I know that's one of Martin's favourites, and that's a bit of a beast of a linear, as we all know. And of course, some of the early Heathkit linears, for example, and a lot of the guys and girls in the States are using a lot of the Heathkit linears still, which is great. It's all very good, and it goes to show that, you know, the majority of these valve amplifiers are built to last, you know, fairly rugged in their overall designs, which is what you want from a linear amplifier. So cons, I can see one big con straight away. It's the fact that valve linears more than often are a lot larger than your solid state linear amplifiers. And what does that mean? It obviously means that they're a little bit heavy as well. So you'll find that the majority of these linears will have big transformers inside, in the fact that even some of these sort of larger linear amplifiers actually come with the transformer shipped separately because it's got so much weight to it. Cons wise, it's kind of about all I can see about it, apart from you will need to do maintenance. With a valve linear, you'll find that over time you will have to do some slight maintenance, and obviously you've got to bear in mind that these are very, very high voltage machines. So the solid state linears, you'll find that yes, you may be able to do some work with those, but all of the high voltage and the high currents, etc., are normally tucked away into a separate module. With the valve linears, you need to be very, 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 very careful. And I know that you've ever had a chat with our old engineer, Krazzy. By the way, how are you, Krazzy? He will tell you what can happen if you don't take care. So that's kind of one of the cons for owning a valve linear amplifier. But overall, it's not a bad way of doing it. Is it going to be as quick as a solid state linear to use? Probably not, because you do need to obviously learn the operation of these linears, and it does take some time to tune. But once you've got there, we see it with a lot of these linears when they come in use, is they often have stickers on there which mark whereabouts the dials need to be in order to operate that band. And with regards to the band changing, unless you're going for something like one of the more expensive Acoms, it is manual band changing. Okay, so before you rush out and purchase your new linear amplifier, there's a few things you need to consider. Number one, budget. What sort of budget have you got to put towards that new linear amplifier? Well, on a used market, you can kind of look from anywhere between as low as £300 maybe for a 1970s or 1980s linear amplifier, such as one of the Yaesu 2100s, for example. My bet is you're probably going to spend the same again, if not double, on getting that valve replaced, because it's going to be had a lot of use over those last few years. So you can go low, but as I said, bear that in mind. It's like buying an old car. You're going to have to spend money on it in order to get it working properly. If you want to buy new, what's it going to cost you to buy new? You can start from as low as maybe £1,250, £1,300, that sort of money. But if you want to buy a linear and keep it for the long term, then I'd always say go for one of the well-known brands, whether it be Acom, for example, on a valve linear, something like the 1010, for example, which runs at around about 700 watts and will give you full current legal limit. Must fit that in just in case we do get the increase, but it will give you full current legal limit at 400 watts quite easily, and just sort of chug along nice and smoothly. Moving around from that, if you want to spend sort of £2,000 upwards, then you're looking at linears such as the Acom 1000, for example. You can start looking at solid state linears, so Acom 500 would be a good option. That was the very small one that you saw earlier on the desk, and we'll try and cut through to that a bit later. Moving on from that, you want to go into the £3,000, £4,000 sort of ranges. Look at stuff like the Acom 1500 and look at the Acom 1200, for example. You've got a lot of options, and obviously it used to be the case that it was kind of £1 a watt when it came to linear amplifiers. Unfortunately now, due to things that are going on in the world and things that have happened, the prices have increased a fair load. So what used to be £1 a watt now, you're normally looking at about £2 to £3 a watt. So if you want to sort of base it on that and work out what your budget could be in the future. Okay, so that's the budget side basically, as to how to plan to what budget you're going to need to get your linear. So intended use. What's going to be your intended use of the linear? Is it going to be sitting in the shack all the time? Are you going to take it on the expeditions? Are you a contester? Do you need to link it? Maybe even combine linears on top of each other, etc. All of these things you need to sort of bear in mind. Are you a slow operator? Do you just sit on 80 meters or top band, hopefully not running too much power? We know who you are. But sitting on top band, you tune and you leave your linear on that spot frequency for the whole of the week, and that's you done. So these are the things you need to bear in mind. So for example, if you're all over the place, you're operating in the contest, you're changing bands, you've got all your resonant antennas, you need plenty of antenna outputs, then something like the SPE, for example. Why not look at the SPE linear? There's no other linears really like it on the market, in the fact that it's a very compact design, fully automated as well. But again, it's a solid state linear, so bear in mind you need to treat it with some respect. Good thing is, if you do make an error, most of these linears now have EPROMs, etc. inside, and they will keep a log of how it's been operated. So if there is an issue, majority of the time it is going to be an operator issue. You know, I see the linears that I've seen come into the workshop, etc., have been operator issues. So do everything as per the manual when it comes to operating with a linear, and you should be anyway, because you know you're dealing with high power. But yeah, intended use. So if you're going to be sitting on 80 meters, for example, and you want the biggest signal on the band, as they say, then you know, look at something like an Acom 2000A. You've got 2 kilowatts of power. Obviously, you're only going to be using your legal allocation unless you're in another country. But yeah, it'll keep the shack warm for you as well. You can turn down the heating and save a few quid that way. So we've gone through those two subjects now, and the next subject is space. Is this going to fit in your shack? Or are you in a cupboard somewhere operating from your very small closet shack? That's what you need to bear in mind. And these linears are, I mean, they're a vast size really when you think about it. I mean, this is a kilowatt valve linear. And as you can see, the depth alone is the length of my arm there. So bear that in mind. As I said, these are quite weighty as well. So you may want to look at solid state linears just for the smaller footprint. So be careful, because even linears such as the Power Genius, which is a solid state linear, is probably twice the depth of this one. So as with anything that you've seen on the channel, please try and come down to the store and take a look first. As you can see, we've got all of these linears on display, and it's not an issue that we can show you the size, we can take measurements for you, etc. if you want to call, if you can't make it down. But bear in mind, what sort of footprint have you got for the linear that you're buying? And then last of all, we've said it already, maintenance. Can you maintain the linear that you're going to buy? If it's a no, then go solid state and have an easy life basically. But if you don't mind the slow operation of the valve linear, and you don't mind doing a bit of tinkering yourself, and you're safe with it, then valves are an option. So basically, I've not made it that clear for you as to whether you should really go valve or solid state. Why is that? Tony, why haven't you just told me, buy a solid state one, buy a valve linear? Because they both do different jobs basically, even though they've got the same outcome at the end, that your small signal is going to go in and come out large. But you need to make that decision yourself. We can guide you in the right direction, hopefully, but it is a decision you need to make yourself. And speak to an Elmer. Most Elmers have run linears over the years, trying to chase that DXCC. So let's have a look at some of the current models that are available. We'll go through some of the pricing, etc. And any questions, leave them in the comments. Okay, so we may as well start off with these linears that are on the table now. And taking a look at this one first, this is the Acom 1000. So built and produced in Bulgaria. And this one is actually a used example. And I'll give you a rough idea of pricing on a used one. It's a kilowatt linear, basically, valve linear. And we're looking at just over £2,000 in price to purchase. Now, all fully checked out by the workshop, as with all the used equipment, and this one's hardly been used, to be honest with you. And you may find that actually a used linear is not a bad way to go if you're buying from a dealer, etc., because they are fully tested out. And what we find is there's a lot of linears that are kind of bought later in life and they may not have been used as often as you think. Okay, so new price on one of these is around about £2,600 or so, give or take fluctuations in exchange rates. So as you saw on the used saving, £400 or £500, which isn't too bad, is it? Now, fancy a little bit more power, as we mentioned earlier, then Acom also produced the 2000A. Now, the 2000A does something a little bit special because it is a valve linear, but it kind of gives you the flexibility of a solid state linear as well, in the fact that it comes with this controller. And what this controller allows you to do is basically fully automate a valve linear. So literally by pressing the buttons, putting a cable onto your radio, you can select the band you're going to use, and then this will do your plate and load, etc. So all of that manual tuning that we would have done with an Acom 1000, for example, or even an Acom 1010 that we spoke about earlier, then that's all done by the control unit here on the Acom 2000A. Now again, this is a used example of this. Price at the moment is around about £4,500. New price on these, £5,500 plus. So you're saving £1,000 by going for the used option. Different models of these, you may look on the website and say, well, hold on a minute, Tony, I've seen an Acom 1000. It was a lot cheaper than the one that you've got on sale, or even a 2000A. Thing to look out for is there was a model change at some point a few years ago. So a lot of the early Acoms are normally sort of a browny maroony colour on the actual body and the face itself. So as I said, they're the earlier ones. What's the difference? Not a lot of difference, to be honest with you. It's just a design thing, as with anything. Times move on, people's tastes move on, and they've kind of gone for this design now. Okay, so moving on from these, we'll take a look now at some of the Acom solid state linears. Okay, so I'm a little bit out of breath, but luckily, as I said, the solid state linears are a little bit lighter, so it wasn't too much work to magic these over here. Anyway, starting off with this one here, Acom 1200S, which is obviously 1.2 kilowatt, and price wise, looking in the region of about £3,000 or so for the 1200S. Now again, we've got a lovely used example of that here, which is this one, and price around about 2.6, that kind of money, so 2.5 to 2.6, depending on discounts, etc. A lot of linear for the money, and I kind of used the 500 as an example for that, in the fact that the 500 new price is around about the same as the used price of a 1200S. Now, do I need 1.2 kilowatts? Let's be honest, probably not. So 500S is a great option. Yes, it sounds pricey at 2.6, but I mean, let's get it fired up. The good thing with the 500, it is the latest offering from Acom. So what comes with the latest offering? Obviously the latest technology, the fact that you know that everything is brand new in it, the design, the components, and obviously it's going to be built to last for a longer period, which is great with a solid state linear. Now, the other positive with this linear is the footprint. Now, if we take a look at the footprint of this linear, as you can see here, there's nothing to it. You know, it's half the size of this 1200 that's next to it. I mean, look at the depth alone. As you can see, that is a tiny linear. Now, I used to think that the SPE linears were very small until this came along. So, without hesitation, let's have a quick look at those SPE linears. Okay, so SPE Linears. As I said, absolute lover of the SPE linear range from Italy. A lot of the DX guys used to take these away on DX expeditions, and a lot of the contest guys use these as well. So this is the 1.3, as you can see, is much the same size as the 1.5. Now, the 1.3 is slightly less expensive than 1.5. You can buy this with or without the ATU, whereas the 1.5 does come with the ATU as standard. Now, price-wise on this 1.3, we're looking at around about £4,000, and then the 1.5 at 1.5 kilowatts, looking just shy of the £5,000 mark. If this isn't enough for you, even the fact that it's got 4 antenna sockets on the back, and it's fully automated once you link it up to your radio, then you can go for the SPE 2K, which is normally available from stock here. So you have to, to be honest, you have to be quick with that one because we don't stock many of those. But if you want a 2 kilowatt version of these, it is available, and price-wise, again, around about £5,000 to £6,000. So we're running out of time. I've got another couple of linears I'd like to show you from sort of current stock and those that are available to the market at the moment. So let's get these moved and get on with the next one. There we go. So I did say we're going to move on to the last one, but we're going to move on to the last two now before we finish the presentation. So this rather large box here that you saw at the very start of our presentation is the Flex, or the 4 Oscar 3 Alpha Power Genius linear. As you can probably imagine, works really well with a Flex radio, gives you a fully integrated system when you add this onto it. Around about a kilowatt output as standard. Solid state linear as well. So again, very efficient and just easy to use. It will do your band changes, etc. Now, price-wise on this one, just shy of £7,000 GBP. Now, why is it more expensive, Tony? When the other linears were 2,000, you know, 3,000 to get into for the same sort of power output. Again, it's down to that connectivity, and it's down to the way that it operates with your radio. Now, if you check the website, current listing of this, we go into so much more detail as to what I'm going to do now because I just don't have the time, but you really do need to read up about the connectivity with regards to this linear. So this is the Power Genius. One thing to bear in mind, this is the one with the rather large footprint, but if you're running a Flex remotely, you're never going to see that. Anyway, moving on to this now, the latest linear amplifier to the ML&S stable, which is the RF Kits 2K linear. Now it says 2K, but in reality around about 1.5 kilowatts output. Bear in mind, obviously the finals do run at 2K plus, etc., but it's just done for that sort of safety issue where it will just trundle on for years and years and years to come. Good thing with this linear is it is a current design, and it is very, very modern and whisper quiet. So you probably noticed as we've been doing this video, you may have heard some of the fans going off, and a lot of the time you hear that when people are on air. So this linear is whisper quiet, it really is. As I said, a current design, inbuilt computer on this as well for control, as you can see. And again, if you're running a remote station, you can run this remotely, etc., with an iPad and all the rest. And again, multiple antenna sockets, etc., on the rear. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a guide as to which linear to choose and which one may be right for you. As I said, we can't give you the final answer as to yes, it's this one, because that's going to be down to you, and it must really meet the scenario that you're going to use it within, and obviously the guys will try and help you do that. Okay, so just before we go, if you remember last week we had the video on the TS590SG, and if you've not seen that video, may I suggest that you take a quick look at that. We had a little bit of a competition, i.e. we had a free giveaway where you could win this TS590 flask and a bar mat as well. Now, the reason I'm holding the price up is because we do actually have a couple of TS590SGs that are brand new still left over. So $15.99.95 if you want to order one, but you're going to have to be quick. And I'm going to throw in that free case as long as you give me a call during the month of August 2023. So Colin Ashley, you are the winner of these gifts or prizes. You need to get in touch, so if you could email sales@hamradio.co.uk. We've got some extra details so that we can check if it's you. I do think we have your call sign, so please do include that when you email in, and we'll see if it all matches up. But you have won the prizes. So again, sales@hamradio.co.uk, just email in and we'll get these sent off to you. It's no problem at all. So again, thanks for watching. You know, it was a pretty brief presentation with regards to content as to which linear should you choose, and the kind of conclusion that we've come to is that that is really up to you and it's a choice you need to make. But if we can help you in any way, please do contact the staff here. Right, we're going to leave it there. Hopefully we'll see you soon. Keep watching and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to the channel, and catch you next week. Take care.